Friday, actually Good Friday. So today we reflect on Christ's beating and his death and his burial. But we do it with hope because we know the end. We know the resurrection coming on Sunday, that we celebrate his resurrection. So we're continuing and wrapping up the Sermon on the Mount, chapters 5, 6, and 7. Today, specifically looking at 7, and as we think back to this sermon, it begins with Jesus stressing this kingdom of his that he's talking about is going to be way different, and goes through the Beatitudes and shows how it's going to be different, and transitions to looking at behavior or attitude, and that the expectations are high. That you've heard you shall not murder, but anyone who's angry has committed murder. You've heard this, but this. So just stressing the expectations in this kingdom are very high. Transitions to chapter 6 and really kind of goes to spiritual aspects of don't be like the hypocrites, that how you live should be in line with what you believe, and talks about giving to the needy, talks about prayer, talks about fasting, and then laying up your treasures in heaven, that our focus should be on heaven. Which brings us to chapter 7, which really transitions to how we treat others. And it begins by talking about not judging others. And that, why do we look at a speck in someone else's eye when we've got a log in our own? And, I just think, wow, if we as the church just practice this, dealing with ourselves first, that we will see clearly to take the speck out of, or to deal with our own log first before we seek to deal with the speck in our neighbors. Then we get to that famous ask and it'll be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it'll be opened unto you. Remember, in the context of this sermon, this is in how you treat one another. It is not necessarily dealing with material goods or finances. It's dealing with wisdom on judging, of removing the speck from your own eye, and then how we treat others, because it transitions next into the golden rule. Whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. So that really sums up the law and the prophets, and continues this theme on looking at fruit, that we are judged by our fruit, and that we can really look at others on their fruit as well. And it says that every tree that doesn't bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So talking about this future judgment that will be based on fruit and how we live. And then, going on to that not everyone will get into this kingdom. And so we don't know. And then the importance of your foundation, of building your house on a firm foundation. And that brings us to the end of the Sermon on the Mount. And again, we need to remember this, Jesus stressing that his kingdom is way, way, way different. It's really an upside down kingdom compared to the world. That, what is important, what is priority is different. And how we think, how we act, how we live, how we judge, how we treat others, the expectations are way different from the world. And the crowd was astonished. at his teaching. So it's, like I said, probably not even probably, the most famous sermon in the history of the world. So I hope it's been a blessing to you to read through this Sermon on the Mount the last 3 days, and pray it's just not something we do and forget, but there'd be a few things that stand out. I'm thinking as I look, where your heart is, or where your treasure is, there your heart is also. And this concept of judging and looking at the speck in your neighbor's eye when you've got a log in your own. So just some takeaways. If you have any takeaways, I'd love for you to share them in the comments, or let me know you've been on here, and we will be back, Lord willing, on Monday with chapter 8 of Matthew. It's Easter. I pray that you'll be able to get to a worship service someplace to celebrate the resurrection. Really, every Sunday we gather, we celebrate the resurrection. It is because of the resurrection that we gather. But we especially do that on this coming Sunday. But first we get through Good Friday, remembering that Christ willingly went to the cross to bear our sins as our substitutionary atonement, to make us right with God. So have a great day, and if you have any questions, certainly post them, and we'll plan to see you on Monday. God bless.